You wake up. It's dark. You don't have walls, no door, no lock, no shoes, no weapon, nothing between your skin and whatever is out there. And something is out there. About 40 meters away, give or take, something is watching you. It has been watching you for a while. It's deciding. This is not a horror movie. This is Tuesday. For most of the last 2 million years, this was just the situation. Sometimes we talk about early humans and picture these rugged, capable, spear-wielding people who had basically figured things out. Tough, competent, dangerous. That's not the reality. Not at the beginning. Not even close. Here's what the actual predator roster looked like. Pachycrocuta, a hyena the size of a modern lion except built entirely around one thing, its jaw. We're talking bite force that could crush elephant bone. Not crack it, crush it. It could bite through the femur of a full-grown elephant like it was a breadstick, and your ancestors, soft and slow and essentially naked, were considerably easier than an elephant femur. Then you've got the saber-tooth cats, canine teeth up to 28 centimeters long. That's not a tooth, that's a knife you grew in your face. And Haast's eagle in New Zealand, which doesn't get nearly enough credit in this conversation. Talons comparable in size and grip strength to a modern tiger's claws, on a bird that dropped out of the sky, from above, without warning. The bone record is not subtle about any of this. Paleontologists have pulled up skulls of early human children, the Tong child found in South Africa, with puncture marks from a crowned eagle's talons, perfectly preserved. The evidence that something picked up a child and carried it away etched right into the fossil. Which, honestly, is a sentence I had to sit with for a moment. So the question isn't whether early humans were prey. They clearly were. The question, the one that should genuinely bother you, is how any of them survived long enough to become us. Put yourself on the other side of this for a second. You're a saber-toothed cat. It's dusk on the African savanna, maybe 1.8 million years ago, and you're doing your nightly scan. Wildebeest to the left, some antelope further out, and then, over there, a small cluster of these odd, upright primates. Slow. No claws worth mentioning. No real fur. Teeth that couldn't puncture a melon. From where you're standing, they look like the easiest thing on the landscape. And for a long time, you'd be right. This is the part of the human origin story that doesn't get told enough. For hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors weren't running the show. They were on the menu. The fossil evidence from sites across Africa shows Homo erectus remains mixed in with the bones of prey animals, not as hunters, as the hunted. Leopards were dragging early humans up into trees the same way they drag impala today, caching them out of reach of competing scavengers. Cave deposits in South Africa have turned up concentrations of early human bones that match almost exactly the kill patterns of large felids. Not warriors, not apex predators. Prey. Natural selection is an absolutely merciless teacher, but it does eventually get the lesson across. What's striking, though, is that the predators had every physical advantage and still couldn't finish the job. Pachycrocuta had the jaws. The saber-tooths had the weapons. Cave bears, and these things stood 12 feet tall when upright, which is a measurement that stops making sense the longer you look at it, had the mass. Every single one of these animals was better equipped for violence than the small, slow, mostly defenseless primates they were sharing a continent with. And yet here you are. The predators kept hunting, the humans kept dying. And somewhere in that brutal, grinding pressure, something started to shift. Not in the body, but in how these animals moved through the world together. Numbers saved them. Not tools, not fire, not yet. Just numbers. The shift that started pulling early humans out of the prey column and into something else wasn't a physical adaptation. It was a behavioral one, and it's almost embarrassingly simple in hindsight. They stopped being alone. They clustered. And clustering, it turns out, is mathematically protective in a way that no individual trait could replicate. Ecologists have a name for this: the dilution effect. The core idea is straightforward. If a predator attacks a group of 30, your personal odds of being the one it gets are roughly 1 in 30. Spread across a herd or a band, the individual risk drops in direct proportion to group size. It's not courage, it's arithmetic. And it works across species, from fish to zebras to, apparently, early Homo. But here's where it gets more interesting than just safety in numbers. Living in a group wasn't free. It required something cognitively expensive: the ability to track relationships, remember who cooperated last time, manage status, navigate conflict without the group fracturing and leaving everyone exposed again. Primatologists studying chimpanzees today find that social group size correlates almost directly with the size of the neocortex, the part of the brain handling complex social reasoning. The bigger the group you need to manage, the more brain you need to manage it. Which means the predators, by making it lethal to be alone, may have inadvertently been the pressure that drove human brain expansion. Natural selection is a merciless teacher, but occasionally its lesson is get smarter or get eaten. There was a cost, though, a real one. 30 people sleeping in the same place every night is 30 people a predator can find reliably. You've traded individual vulnerability for collective predictability. A leopard that learns where your group camps has just found a pantry. If this is the kind of thing that gets you, drop a like, leave a comment. It genuinely helps. Anyway, the group bought time. It didn't buy safety. And something else was going to have to change before the night stopped being the most dangerous part of every single day. I know you've heard fire was important 1,000 times. Stay with me, because the version you've heard is probably missing the most important part. The standard story is warmth, cooking, nutrition unlocked. All of that is real, but the thing fire actually did that changed the predator equation, the thing that doesn't get nearly enough credit, had nothing to do with what it did to human bodies. It had everything to do with what it did to predator nervous systems. Fire is terrifying to large carnivores. Not mildly off-putting, genuinely, deeply, physiologically terrifying. Lions won't cross a fire line. Leopards won't approach one. The animals that had been treating your ancestors as a reliable food source for hundreds of thousands of years had a hardwired, unoverridable response to flame. And that response was, leave. Immediately. The earliest solid evidence of controlled fire use by humans comes from Kesem Cave in Israel around 400,000 years ago. Ash layers, burned bone, a hearth used repeatedly over a long period. But there are hints of fire use going back nearly 1 million years in South Africa. The honest answer is, we don't know exactly when the relationship became consistent, and the archaeological record isn't going to give us a clean date. What we can say is that once it became a nightly habit, the night fundamentally changed. Before fire, darkness belonged to the predators. They were built for it. Better night vision, better hearing, better smell. You were just a slow, warm thing stumbling around in conditions that actively favored everything hunting you. After fire, you had a perimeter. A bright, crackling, chemical-smelling perimeter that the most dangerous animals on the continent would not cross. For the first time in the history of your lineage, you could sleep, actually sleep, without something large and patient deciding to end you. Before fire, we were something the world happened to. After fire, we started happening to the world. The predators didn't disappear. They just moved their calculations to the hours before the fire was lit and to the moments when it burned low. Here's the weapon nobody talks about when they talk about human survival. Not the spear, not the hand axe, not fire, which we've just covered. The weapon that genuinely tipped the balance, the one that no other animal on the planet had developed to anything like the same degree, was the ability to tell someone else what you'd learned. Think about what that actually means. A saber-tooth cat learns, over years of painful experience, that a particular hunting approach doesn't work against a group of humans who stand their ground and throw things. That knowledge dies with the cat. It doesn't get passed on. The next cat starts from zero. But when one of your ancestors figured out that Pachycrocuta hunts downwind, or that leopards won't follow prey into dense thorn bush, or that a particular watering hole is ambush territory after dark, that information could travel. It could be described to someone who had never been there, who had never seen the predator, who could now survive an encounter they hadn't yet had. Language, or even pre-linguistic communication sophisticated enough to convey behavioral information, was essentially a cheat code that no other species could run. We can't find language in the fossil record. There's no archaeological signature for a word. What we can do is look at skull morphology, the shape of the brain case, the development of Broca's area associated with speech production, and infer backward. The structures associated with complex language were present in Homo heidelbergensis, perhaps 300,000 years ago, maybe earlier. They survived, they adapted, they accumulated. Generation after generation, the knowledge of what killed you and how to avoid it compounded like interest, building a library of survival information that no individual predator could ever match or counter. Now put yourself back on the other side. You're a saber-tooth cat, and the prey you've been hunting for 10,000 generations has started doing something genuinely strange. Behaving as if it knows things it shouldn't know yet, avoiding places it's never been, reacting to threats it hasn't encountered. The hunt is getting harder in ways you cannot explain and have no framework to understand. The prey was learning faster than you could teach it lessons. At some point, surviving stopped being enough. The shift is hard to date precisely, and the archaeological record gets genuinely murky here. But somewhere in the last 100,000 years or so, the relationship between humans and the predators they'd been running from started to invert. Not all at once, not through a single invention or a single moment of collective decision. Gradually, and then very suddenly, depending on which continent you're looking at. Ecologists who study modern predator-prey dynamics have a term for what happens when a predator becomes aware that it is also being hunted. They call it the landscape of fear. It's not a metaphor, it's a measurable phenomenon. Prey animals abandon grazing areas not because predators are physically present, but because predators have been present. The psychological weight of a threat reshapes how an entire species moves through its territory, which watering holes it uses, which hours it's active. Fear restructures the landscape itself. Humans learn to generate that effect deliberately. Persistence hunting is the clearest example, and if you haven't heard of it, it's one of those things that sounds made up until you see it documented. The San people of the Kalahari, observed doing this within living memory, would chase an animal, a kudu, a wildebeest, not at speed, but at a steady jog, for hours, sometimes covering 30 kilometers or more in the midday heat. The animal is faster, much faster, but it cools itself by panting, which requires it to slow down and stop. A human, sweating, bipedal, built for endurance over raw speed, just keeps going. The animal eventually overheats and collapses. The hunter walks up to it. No ambush, no trap, just the slow, patient, physiological fact of being human. Now consider what that looks like from the predator's perspective. The thing that was prey, soft, slow, defenseless, has started following apex carnivores, tracking them, learning their routes. And the same accumulated knowledge that helped humans avoid predators was now being applied in the other direction, mapping territories, identifying patterns, turning the hunters into the hunted. The woolly mammoth didn't see it coming. Neither did the saber-tooth cat. Neither did the short-faced bear, the largest terrestrial mammalian predator North America had ever produced. They were all about to run out of time. The pattern across continents is almost too consistent to sit with comfortably. Humans arrive in North America. The best current evidence puts it somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 years ago. And within roughly 1,000 years, 35 genera of large mammals are gone, Not reduced, gone. The mammoths, the mastodons, the short-faced bear, the American lion, the giant ground sloth the size of an elephant. An entire megafauna that had survived multiple ice ages, that had weathered climate shifts that reshaped the continent, that had been ecologically dominant for millions of years. Gone, in what is, geologically speaking, an eye blink. The same signature appears in Australia, in Madagascar, across Europe. Everywhere anatomically modern humans arrived, the large animals, specifically the ones that had never learned to fear a small, slow, mostly hairless biped, collapsed within a few thousand years of contact. The honest answer is that we can't fully separate human hunting pressure from climate change in every case, and serious researchers still argue about the proportions. But the pattern is too clean, too repeated, too correlated with human arrival specifically, rather than with temperature shifts that had happened before without triggering the same extinctions. Something about us was different. Something about us was, for the animals that encountered us without any prior context, catastrophically surprising. They had no framework for what we were. A lion understands another lion. It understands a hyena, a wild dog, a crocodile, animals it has coexisted with long enough to develop calibrated responses. It did not understand a creature that could coordinate across time, that could communicate a hunting strategy to individuals who weren't present when the strategy was developed, that could come back to the same animal tomorrow with a refined approach. The woolly mammoth gone. The saber-tooth cat gone. Pachycrocuta, whose jaws could crush elephant bone like a breadstick, gone. The animals that had dominated their ecosystems for millions of years, that had made the dark genuinely lethal for your ancestors, couldn't survive us. Go back to that opening image. Something in the dark, 40 meters away, deciding. For most of human history, the fear moved in one direction, from you, outward, into the night. Somewhere in the last 50,000 years, quietly and then all at once, it reversed. The predators never really understood what they were dealing with. They just learned too late to be afraid.